Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be presenting to you about a really prominent figure right now in the news and media throughout these past couple months to years. It's Volodymyr Zelensky. He is the current president of Ukraine. So, a little bit about Volodymyr Zelensky. He was born on January 25th, 1978, in a small town called Kryvyi Ukraine, which is in southern Ukraine. Zelensky was born to a Jewish family. He had Jewish parents. And his mother's side of the family survived the war, in large part because some of them were evacuated by train to Uzbekistan as the German occupation of Ukraine began. Now we're talking about World War II. So many of Zelensky's relatives on his father's side were also murdered by the Nazis. His paternal grandfather lost his life, and his three brothers as well, in the Holocaust. In 1995, Zelensky entered the Kryvyi Economic Institute, a local campus in the Kyiv National Economic University. He graduated with a law degree in the year of 2000. Okay, and it's funny enough, he actually didn't practice any law once he finished. He actually was more into theater and theatrics. So he was a big theater performer, studio performer, and studio development. So he actually was part of a group called the Quarter 95, and they did a lot of theater performances, and they did a lot of political satire, and that's where he gained a lot of traction in the media, and was on a show, a news station show, and just cable show called Inter 1+1, where he was a regular, starring his comedy and satire performances in theatrics. After a few years of doing that, he became a co-star in a very popular Ukrainian TV series, and this is in 2015, called Servant of the People. You can actually find this show on Netflix right now, so if you have a subscription, you can watch this show where Zelensky is a co-star. And he played a high school teacher who became president in the show, foreshadowing his real-life political career, which is pretty interesting. Primary goals when Zelensky came out that he had a political agenda and that he wanted to get into politics was anti-corruption, transparency, anti-corruption and transparency. So in 2019, he actually won the Ukrainian presidential election by a staggering 73% of votes. As reported by BBC News, he won by a landslide. His campaign focused majorly on fighting corruption, bringing fresh faces into Ukrainian politics, and a desire to change and break out from traditional political establishment. And Zelensky's quote for the BBC News was, "I'm not a politician, I'm just an ordinary guy," which a lot of people liked, especially the younger adults and college students in Ukraine, as all they knew was economic turmoil and corruption. So they were trying to break away from that, and he was successful. So a couple of his things that he wanted to focus on when he became president was peace in Donbass, which we'll get to, but it's a region in eastern Ukraine, as well as economic betterment for ordinary Ukrainians and a non-corrupt, responsive government. And he was pretty successful in fixing the corruption and improving a couple key things with economics, but not so much in the Donbass region. So a couple things that he did well was his reforms, diplomacy, and some achievements, but he's always had a hard time with the relationships with Russia, primarily because of the Donbass region, as I mentioned, in eastern Ukraine, where there was fighting. So he faced a lot of challenges. Peaceful resolution in eastern Ukraine was one of them, and he had a hard time, but he always wanted to protect Ukraine's sovereignty. Where Zelensky was successful was in his domestic reforms. He had significant reforms in healthcare, education, and the judiciary place, and he became more effective in creating a transparent local government, as portrayed by the Times News in an article by them. He is actively engaged always in international diplomacy with leaders like Donald Trump, Angela Merkel, and Emmanuel Macron. He has significant support for Ukrainian conflicts and reforms, and he's gaining a lot of traction in the international space. Due to his inexperience, though, with politics and COVID-19, a lot of his reforms that he had was slowing him down. And not to mention, then came February 24th, 2022, Zelensky had to deal with the invasion on Ukraine. Although this started in 2014 with the conflict in Donbass, as I mentioned, now Russia, on the February 24th, 2022, there was a full-scale invasion, which was the largest European invasion since World War II. So Zelensky's been dealing a lot with that. His presence in Ukraine was key, as it created a lot of courage, confidence, and solidarity on a global and national front. And his resilience to stay and be on the front lines is what made him such a hero and prominent figure in the news. And it even led him to being the Times Person of the Year in 2022. Times editor-in-chief Edward Felsenthal stated that year's decision was the most clear-cut in memory. And it's because Volodymyr Zelensky galvanized the world in a way that we haven't seen in decades, Felsenthal added in a statement. Where is Zelensky now? Well, Zelensky's still fighting multiple political agendas. He's got an image to upkeep, and his approval ratings fluctuate, but he remains a symbol of reform in Ukraine. He has been attending multiple summits, UN conferences, in trying to uphold his political agenda, more so right now in freeing captured territory in Ukraine as well as peace. He most recently demonstrated a 10-point peace plan, which he presented at a conference of the Group of 20 Nations, which has gathered a lot of support. And this is publishing from the United States Institute of Peace. It's a peace plan for, once finalized, will have broad international support and can share as a platform for the whole world with how to deal with terrorists and invasions. In summary, Volodymyr Zelensky, started from a small town, and he became a comedian and a theatrical performer, and he gained a lot of traction with the people, and he broke the traditional political forms and reformed the Ukrainian government. And he's, present to this day, fighting corruption and doing what presidents do. Thank you, guys.